Anders Fjordback was at the wheel of it, and he went off and did quite a lot of damage. So whether that car does make it into this session remains to be seen, but the team certainly was hard at work, desperately trying to get it ready. Then, later in the session, we lost another one, and the number 1, 2, 3 Rupert Atzberger KTM off the road. He's sharing that car this week, or was, with Henrik Still, quick GT4 racer. Sadly, we ain't going to see that because the damage is too great. So we are down to 11. It's got a slightly greater entry. Now it's down by 1. But even so, we're in for some competitive racing. And one of the good things is that we've gained another Porsche. So to go with the cars already of Speed Factory for Aurelius Rustica and Michael Vergers, we've now got another car from the LP Racing squad, and it is for Leonardo Gaurini, who's done a bit of Lamborghini Super Trofeo and the Gentleman Trophy in the early days of the then Blancpain Endurance Series. He's now, admittedly as a soloist, but he's a Porsche driver. There is the other LP racing car, but not a Porsche as you see. It's the Audi LP for Luca Piri, and Luca is the man behind the wheel of the car that he shares with Stefan Ratel, the brainchild of GT3 and indeed these GT2 regulations. Number 16 KTM is Seti Sarmini and Stefan Rossina. And Stefan Rossina is the quicker of the two, and he's behind the wheel of the car at the moment. The KTMs that have proved to be quite flighty, really. They're quick, they're powerful, they're light, and they're quite prone to swap ends, as we've seen in previous races. But when they're pointing in the right direction, they are quick bits of kit. In terms of race wins, and the championship has been to Monza, Hockenheim and Misano, the majority of the wins have gone the way of Anders Fjordback and Mark Patterson. They have now taken 4 to the 2 of Bert Longin and Peter Guelinckx. Now that Porsche is the car of Aurelius Rustica, shares with Michael Vergers in the pseudo martini colours, and Aurelius Rustica is letting Michael go out first. Try and work on whatever setup you can for the wet conditions. The whole concept of GT2 is that they are AM friendly. There is aero, but it doesn't have a massive effect in the same way that it does on a GT3 car. So they are fun to drive rather than being for the pro drivers. So the AMs can enjoy these cars, not necessarily in these conditions, although it is a fine circuit. So I think there's going to be an element of self-preservation in this session as the car of Michael Vergers then blasts downhill. They've been a bit unlucky this season. They've had a couple of third places, but not any higher than that. Partly one of the reasons that the team will offer you is that the Porsche is not the easiest car to get a handle on. Now you can see in typical Spa fashion how the spray hangs in the air. So as Michael Vergers, who's on double duty this weekend in terms of driving and also being an official, because he's the driving standards advisor of British GT, as he comes up the hill to Les Cons, we can see how the spray hangs in the air behind him and indeed from the car ahead of him. So visibility not great. Inevitably in a session like this, we're not thinking about the times, it is about the drivers getting the mileage in. But see how much water is being gushed aside as the car drops down to Bruxelles there. So Michael Vergers then drops down towards Pouhon. We haven't actually got that many takers yet. 1 or 2 have gone out and come straight back in, including Mauro Casadei, who is with the experienced Jaromir Jirik. Mauro kind of tempting lots of his old mates from GT days past back out again. And Jaromir Jirik we saw in the GT3 European Championship back in 2009 roundabouts. So he is into the series this weekend. Through goes Michael Vergers once more, pretty much with the road to himself at the moment. Bert Longin first out, but we haven't yet got a proper lap time in. So given the length of the lap, of course, at Spa, it takes a while for a lap time to be posted. Bert Longin, you can pretty much assure, is going to be one of the quickest. Hugely experienced driver, winner of the Spa 24 Hours, and around this 4.3 mile circuit, which is 7 kilometres in length. Bert Longin will be the first, or one of the first, to come through and set a target time. So Michael Vergers there down towards the chicane. I think probably now we can just about lose the bus stop tag for it, because it is no longer anything like the original bus stop that was so dubbed by Gordon Spice in the days of the European Touring Car Championships by 24 hours. Michael Vergers then goes faster than Bet Longin, 2 minutes 52.089, but there is a lot more to come, of course, from these cars. They're way, way slower than what they were doing in the dry earlier on. But for the moment, Bet Longin and Michael Vergers are the two that you can anticipate to be doing good things up at the top of the times. As probably the most experienced and competitive drivers within the entry. Not exclusively so, but amongst. Stefan Rossiner is another man to keep an eye on, and in that little KTM, I think is going to be worth keeping in mind for a top time. What we need to also see to an extent is whether or not the road gets any drier over the course of this session, or stays as it is, or heaven forfend, gets even wetter, and then things are going to get really challenging. There is Bet Longin, down to third now, Stefan Rossiner having just gone up to second. So Bet Longin drops downhill, turns through the so-called Speaker's Corner, the left-hander that's otherwise unnamed, but so dubbed because it was the one part of the circuit that you could see from the old commentary facility here, overlooking the now endurance pits, the old pits, and the commentators, the Speaker's Corner was so dubbed. Now Bet Longin goes through. Turns his way through the right and the left of the pith path, and then back onto the power. The time to beat is this 2 minutes 52 of Michael Vergers, but he also wants to get ahead of Stefan Rossiner, who was only a couple of tenths shy of Michael Vergers on that last lap through, so keep an eye very definitely on that KTM. Bet Longin, as you can see, doing good things in the sectors. So as the session wears on, I'm not suggesting the road is getting drier necessarily, but what is happening is that the drivers are getting a bit more comfortable of the conditions, and therefore a little bit happier to press on. So Bet Longin goes over the timing line, and that lap is a 2 minutes 50.880 to go quickest. Turns his way down through La Source, and blasts onto another lap as Stefan Ratel gets ready to go in the car that Luca Piri has currently put to be fourth fastest within this session. Now there is the Lamborghini heading up towards the Lecombe sequence. Mauro Casadei is at the wheel of it. And Mauro, who is a very experienced racer, part of the Lamborghini fabric these days, but a man to ignore at your peril. It was good to have him back racing at Misano when we had the cars out last, and he was pretty competitive as well. So Mauro, who was talking very positively about GT2, going to different drivers to try and tempt them back out into racing, and if you like, selling the concept at the same time of exactly what GT2 is all about. These cars that you have some of the manufacturers like Audi and Porsche building cars for, others admittedly are taking an existing car, slightly tweaking it, getting a toe in the water, and I suspect it's one of those chicken and egg situations. If manufacturers build cars, people will race them, but they're not building them until people come into the championship. So that's why there's a lot of effort going on behind the scenes to try and stir up as much interest as possible. Mauro Casadei then currently is 6th in this session. They were doing 2:24s in the dry earlier on, and now we're at 2 minutes 49. Stefan Rossiner having just gone to the top of the times. Mauro Casadei improving, in fairness to him. So with the car now heading up towards Blanchimont. Still the spray hangs in the air. Now this is the new Porsche for the weekend. You've got one in the pseudo martini colours and one looking like a packet of fags in the good old early 80s works colours. But Leonardo Gaurini, the Swiss driver for LP Racing, it's good to have more and more of the Porsches within the entry. And Leonardo Gaurini has really been thrown in at the deep end, hasn't he? They got the paid practice yesterday, which is like a general free test for the cars, but then the free practice sessions today, one dry, now into the wet, so challenging circuit, challenging weather, brand new car to him, but Gaurini will get faster, I'm sure. He certainly wasn't the slowest earlier on in the day. He was 7th out of the 12 that we had in that first session, so Leonardo Gaurini looking pretty good. Now, Bert Longin bringing down his time, and he's done a 2 minutes 47.758 now. Michael Vergers goes quicker, 2 minutes 47.665. And the one car that has yet to emerge, understandably, that we're anticipating is the Fjordback Patterson Audi high-class racing, as far as we know, working on it, trying to get the car repaired for the championship leaders. They come here with 130 points to the 104 of Guelinckx and Longin. Leonardo Gaurini goes across the line, and he's up to 7th now. So it is Vergers, Longin, Rossina, Piri, Casadei, Christoph Ulrich, 6th, another of the KTM drivers. This man Gaurini 7th, and then 8th fastest now is number 24, which is the Chris Rosenberger and Hans Stuck KTM. And then at the foot of the times, without having done a proper lap, is this car, Peter Cox, who dips in and out of the championship, sharing with Michael Bleekemolen, his fellow Dutchman. Michael Bleekemolen, one-time Grand Prix racer. He tried to qualify for a few more, but in terms of actual Grand Prix starts, it was just the one for the ATS team for Michael Bleekemolen. And Mauro Casadei, just to make the point, is in a different car for the weekend and a different co-driver, but he still carries the pit stop compensation that you get going into today's race. So even though it's a different co-driver, the penalty for him, if you like, still stands. Anders Fjordback, Mark Patterson's high-class Audi, we understand, isn't going to be on track today. So it will miss this free practice, and it will also, of course, miss qualifying, but hopefully it can be made good for the 2 races that we have tomorrow. Start them both at the back. It shouldn't be a massive handicap for 2 achieving accomplished drivers, and it'll be well worth watching if the team can get it sorted. It was Anders Fjordback, I understand, at the wheel. I think it was at La Source that it went off, but quite unlike him to do that. So it's a big surprise to see the damage. The car was actually fastest in the drive this morning, but little good did it do it with that drama right at the very end, putting it off the road. So Peter Cox to focus on for the moment. His first flying lap put him 4th. Peter, who has barely missed the season since he came into Formula Ford 1600 racing in the early to mid-1980s, went as far as Formula 3000, then switched to touring cars and to GT racing. Very versatile driver in that respect, and hugely experienced. And right now, it's another Dutchman, Michael Vergers, who is lighting up the timing screen with purples. Now, is that suggesting the road is getting any drier? I'll tell you, looking out the window, there are still puddles on the road. Or does it suggest they're getting a bit more confident in the conditions? Either way, it is Vergers bringing the times down at the top at the moment. Bert Longin into the pits. He will give way to Peter Guelinckx in due course. Interesting, actually, that Bert is doing the majority of the driving thus far, because there's an argument to say that with Peter Guelinckx being the less experienced of the two, put him behind the wheel, let him do some mileage. But for the moment, the Audi is still in the control of Bert Longin and is second fastest, 1.7 seconds being the margin behind Michael Vergers there. So the Porsche accelerating up through Lecombe, number 5, Michael Vergers at the wheel of it. And again, he got the gun for hire, as it were, doing the early part of the session. They will need to put in Aurelius Rustica in the case of the Porsche, and the second driver in the case of all the other cars, if nothing else, just to let them have some experience of Spa in the wet. But right now, you've got Michael Vergers rather commandeering this. So ideally, get the car set up perfectly for the conditions, then hand over to your co-driver, in most cases the bill payer, and then let them experience Spa in the wet. So Vergers goes through Pont. Peter Cox up to second fastest now, 2 minutes 47.558 from Bert Longin and then Stefan Rossina. Luca Piri is 5th quickest and Leonardo Gaurini is 6th fastest now. Vergers way out wide there, rides the curb, just about controls it. Vergers faster again last time, 2 minutes 45.969. Up through the chicane and into the pits, indeed, comes Michael Vergers. So having been saying that he'd rather commandeered the car, I think possibly now is the opportunity, having shown what it's capable of, and Michael happy, give it over to Aurelius Rustica. Big Porsche fan is Aurelius, relatively inexperienced driver. Luca Piri comes through, almost up to the end of the first third of the session now. But Luca Piri to give way ultimately to Stefan Ratel in the Audi, the very distinctive GT2 Audi. From the front, you think, oh yeah, it looks just like the GT3 car, but when you see it from the side profile or the back, very, very different shape to the rear of the car. So Vergers pits, and that last lap from Luca Piri, 2 minutes 54. It's been a steady effort this far from the LP Racing Audi. There is no point, though, in being a hero and going off the road, because this doesn't affect a grid at all. It's purely mileage, purely experience that they are after at the moment. There is the Porsche. Has Michael Vergers bailed and given it over to Aurelius Rustica? Let us see. Downhill turns Luca Piri. So Luca, another of the experienced drivers from old days of FIA GT, as well as Euro NASCAR, as well as One Make GT racing. And all of this rather came about. Oops, he's off the road at Speaker's Corner. Completely missed the line there. Thankfully, runs it out wide without damage. But this partnership with Stefan Ratel all came about because they discovered in lockdown that they were neighbours and had an interest in motorsports, and then started racing on a sim against one another. And then thought, well, I know, why don't we go do real-world racing together? Stefan said, I've got the perfect category for us. So the GT2 Audi was purchased, and it's brought Luca Piri back into competition. So going well. Good to see them back on the grid, both of them. And in terms of race results, they've had a couple of second places, one at Hockenheim, one at Misano. So the win can't be far away for Stefan Ratel and Luca Piri, as the Audi turns then now down through campus and on towards the Courbe Paul Frere down at the foot of the lap. You can see lots of work going on to make Spa look like Spa again after the horrendous weather that the region has suffered of late. And the paddock is being resurfaced as I speak. Lots and lots of work, and so rain again is the last thing that the Spa management needed in terms of trying to get the place ready for next week's Spa 24 Hours, for which the teams, some stay, many, many more will arrive on Sunday evening. So wiper on, Luca Piri up towards the chicane. And this might be an improvement. It was a little bit down in the middle sector after the running wide, but Luca Piri comes through now. And no, misses out by a second with that excursion. Right, there's number 5 Porsche ready to go back out then. The best we've had out of the Porsche this year has been a 3rd place for the Speed Factory racing car. It runs, as you see from the badge on the front of it, in the Pro-Am class. There's Pro-Am and there is Am. At the moment, the best of the Ams is Mauro Casadei, who's got the Lamborghini up to 5th fastest. Leonardo Gaurini goes through, 5th quickest. And now sets off down the hill. So there, the Porsche blasts through the spray. Peter Cox, in the meantime, has now gone fastest. briefly, because Longin has now gone fastest. So Peter Cox did a 2:45.460 in the KTM, and now Longin 2 minutes 45.105. It is still, as you can see from the amount of water being swept aside by the number 911, just how wet and horrible it is. So up towards Bruxelles comes the Porsche, and Leonardo Gaurini finds where there might be a little bit of grip. Often it's on the outside of the corner, and comes through Bruxelles now gently with the application of the throttle, ready to drop down the hill. We have Stefan Rossiner into the pit lane after his early heroics aboard the KTM that he shares with Seti Samini, a car that's been in the wars a bit, really, this season with a bit of damage. And we also understand that number 17, which is the Klaus Angerhofer and Hubert Trunkenpolz KTM, is also yet to venture out because that's having an engine change. So that would make it 10. 11 would be the Audi that's being repaired, and the 12th car that we're not going to see is the Reiter KTM that's rather hors de combat. So hopefully we can get the KTM on circuit fairly shortly. But yes, Stefan Rossiner, former Porsche Super Cup racer, doing a good job in the number 16 KTM. Aurelius Rustica has taken out number 5 Porsche, and that car now third, thanks to Michael Vergers' earlier time. But Longin, in the meantime, presses on. He has done a 2:45.1 as his best, and for Aurelius Rustica, I don't think he's going to get near about Longin time, but we'll see what he can do in terms of at least narrowing that gap. Longin once more up towards the timing line. Goes through, goes quicker. 2 minutes 44.791 now. So down the hill comes the Audi. A little twitch there as Longin tries to find the grip. The times are coming bit by bit. Granted, the cars are getting lighter as well, of course, all the time. Longin was second fastest in the free practice session earlier on in the day, and that car now is faster by 0.669 of a second. Right, Klaus Angerhofer has ventured out, number 17, the former German motorbike racer, world endurance bike competitor, before he moved to KTMs. Quite a lot of people being tempted from 2 wheels to 4 because of that KTM link, and KTM running its one-make series, the Crossbow Battle, for a variety of spec of KTM. Quite popular. We had it at the GT World Challenge Europe in Hungary a couple of years ago. So there is number 7, this is Christoph Ulrich, who this weekend is driving on his own. He's had a shuffle of co-drivers during the course of the season, but Christoph Ulrich goes solo. there is the Klaus Angerhofer KTM down towards the chicane, and this car with its new engine just out, so drivers playing themselves in, also making sure that engine is okay. So far so good. Klaus Angerhofer's car slowest of all in the early morning session, only did 13 laps, but that wasn't actually a bad number. So engine change and that car back on track. So it's missed just under half the session, but decent work there by the team operating the KTM, the squad from True Racing. Sister car to the Seni Samili Stefan Rossina entry. There is number 32 in the pit lane, which is Mauro Casadei, who's kind of yo-yoed up the order, really. And he's dropped down as others have gone quicker. Now, assuming Mauro stays in that car, he'll be worth watching. It could well be that he hands it now to Jaromir Jirik, but Jaromir, a little bit race rusty possibly, gets away now, accelerates off down the pit road. The car does. We'll confirm in a moment which driver is behind the wheel of it, because it will trip the beam at the end of the pit lane. And Peter Guelinckx gets aboard number 81. So Bert Longin has done exactly what he needs to. He has gone fastest. He's set the time. He's got the car set up nicely. Peter Guelinckx has done a really nice job in his few races this year. He's still learning all the time, having done some Creventic racing, but he's been a quick learner and drove really, really well at Misano. Had a very, very good race to take honours in the second race away from Mark Patterson. It's normally Bert Longin that goes up against Anders Fjordback, but the two have had some good battles this year. So as the cars work their way through this session, more and more now doing the driver change. And in fact, Peter Cox has given away now to Michael Bleekemolen as well in number 23. Michael, 71 years of age, and the Dutch driver will be on track. There is soloist Christoph Ulrich, one of two soloists, because you've got Leonardo Gaurini as well going solo. And Ulrich is the second fastest of the AMs, in fact, because Gaurini has taken over the class lead now. So the Sportec KTM. Other drivers getting ready to go. Jaromir Jirik will take over the Lamborghini number 32 in due course. Mauro Casadei has gone back out, but gradually second drivers will be given an opportunity to go. So with two races, both to be run tomorrow, over 50-minute duration, mandatory pit stops, of course. Just going back to the KTM of Trunkenpolz and Angerhofer, technically speaking, an engine change goes against the regulations, but because this is free practice, there's no penalty to be awarded, so they can continue in the weekend unimpeded for now. Luca Piri is about to give way to Stefan Ratel with a quick word about what the track conditions are like. When we get to the race itself, it is going to be 10 seconds to the class winners last time out, so Peter Guelinckx and Bert Longin will have 10, and so also will Mauro Casadei as the AM winner with Cedric Leimer. Then 7 seconds will go, if the car starts, to the Fjordback Patterson Audi in Pro-Am and in AM to Christoph Ulrich, and 5 seconds will go to the Samini and Rossina KTM for third at Misano, and also 5 seconds in the AM class to the Chris Rosenberger and Hans-Joachim Stuck KTM, and Chris Rosenberger has done all the driving thus far in that car in this session. So downhill drops the Michael Bleekemolen KTM. The Bleekemolens, as a family, inveterate racers, not only Michael, but his two sons, Sebastian and Jeroen. And GT racers predominantly, but sports racers in America as well. Michael Bleekemolen, they've run their own team for years, for many, many seasons. Michael Bleekemolen associated with the European Renault categories, but we've not seen him for a while. It's good to have him back out on track, a one-time Grand Prix racer. He tried to qualify in shadows, but it was for ATS that he raced in just one Grand Prix. But a Formula 1 driver racer he has been in his time. Stefan Rossina has kept number 16 to himself and is back out and going quicker in sectors. Downhill goes 23 then, around Bruxelles. So 23, Michael Bleekemolen, reminding himself what Spa's all like, but he's been around it often enough. He's also learning about this car and having to do it in pretty grotty conditions. The number 23 KTM 6th fastest in the earlier session, of course, with a Peter Cox time. Peter the quicker of the two drivers. But now having set a time, giving the car over to his fellow countrymen so that Michael can get some more experience as well. Klaus Angerhofer, having had a couple of installation laps, has pitted after that engine change. Getting quicker and quicker. So Luca Piri has gone back out just after that pit stop and stayed behind the wheel seemingly, so he's doing the bulk of the driving. There is Luca Piri, and as this is an outlap, it's a fairly gentle outlap for the moment. I suspect that Luca Piri is building up to a quick lap, but this one, as I say, out of the pit lane is a gentle one, understandably, but the next and the one after that potentially will have a better time. So through the chicane comes 88 Audi. Up towards the timing line and goes through onto a flying lap now. So this is the one that's going to count for Luca Piri. That part of Spa, I hesitate to say it looks dry-ish, but it's not quite as wet maybe as it was earlier on. But then you look at the car and a mistake is made anyway by Piri. He runs out wide and you appreciate just how wet and treacherous it still is. So it's not getting any better for the drivers, is it? That's for sure. So plunges downhill, but has lost track position to Peter Guelinckx. So the best that that car did is a 2 minutes 44 in Bert Longin's hands. Don't expect necessarily Peter Guelinckx to be as quick, but it will be interesting to see what the margin is between them and how the clock runs as well. So the best that it's done in Sector 1 is a 44.7, and it is quite a chunk down there, over 2 seconds, which is partly pace, but also the weather, because Peter Guelinckx, having not had to cope with this car in these conditions around here, is being understandably cautious. And looking at the sky, it's pretty set in for the day, this. The forecast is not great, so they've got qualifying later on. Guelinckx misses his braking point and just loses a little bit of traction, dropping down towards Bruxelles. Out of Pouan goes Guelinckx. But the second drivers, in the majority of cases, not as quick as the drivers we've already seen out. So irrespective of what the weather conditions are like, the times are going to be a bit slower anyway. What we are seeing is improvements from 1 or 2, like Leonardo Gaurini, 2 minutes 48.714. So his Porsche is chipping away, and Gaurini, although he's not improving in sectors on this lap, is doing his best, that's for sure. 23 minutes on the clock. So Peter Guelinckx accelerates towards us. So Guelinckx then now up towards the chicane. Now, who else do we need to be looking at? Number 17 KTM has just gone back out, so Klaus Angerhofer yet to do a time. They've got this new engine in the car, and assuming they're happy, now we can possibly expect something. So that car is heading up through Ratel at the moment, and the number 17 KTM onto a flying lap this time. Klaus Angerhofer not really going for a time necessarily, concentrating rather more on making sure that the new engine is doing what it should do. But the Angerhofer KTM, one to watch, and it's in a little track battle with number 60 that Sedi Samini has now taken over. He's another graduate of the KTM Crossbow series, Sedi Samini. Right, Mauro Casadei is back into the pit lane, but is Mauro going to give way to Jaromir Jirik? We've seen him standing ready, but trying to peer into the car, hard to gauge. Leonardo Gaurini is in as well. So the LP Racing Porsche, quicker, dare one say, than the LP Racing Audi. And now Stefan Ratel is being shown as being behind the wheel of 88. So Luca Piri, we thought had taken it back out. It might have been that the transponder was in the wrong place. But anyway, it's now very definitely showing Stefan Ratel's name, and that car is 7th fastest. So Stefan is at the wheel. Leonardo Gaurini awaits release from the pit lane, and the clock has got 21 minutes still to run. The LP Racing squad overseeing this pit stop. Right, that's the Klaus Angerhofer KTM, so it's back on track. Hopefully, everything in the engine bay now is fine, so they can concentrate on getting a lap time out of the car. And he's being ever so gentle with it. Now, that might be, again, to run it in. It might also be the conditions, but it's not going to be doing sparkling lap times necessarily in this session, but as long as it's healthy, that's the main aim, I think, from the team. In terms of sector times, it is picking up its pace, so hopefully we can get a lap time on the board from this car. Also, Hans Stuck, double Le Mans winner, Grand Prix racer, pro car hero, touring car legend, you name it. Hans Stuck has taken over number 24 KTM now as well, and back on track he has gone. So turning his way up through the chicane is Klaus Angerhofer. Slightly deep into it, so the line was a bit compromised. Comes over the timing line now and breaks the beam to do a fairly modest 3 minutes 11, but there's more to come as this car gets dialed in, and the team happier all the time that that engine change has been completed properly, and there's nothing nasty that they didn't do right that's still going to be a problem. The best time though, Bert Longchamps, 2 minutes 44.791. Michael Blekemolen at the wheel of the Peter Cox KTM, just 0.669 of a second behind. So two very, very different cars. There's the one that's the fastest, the Audi, and the KTM, smaller, less powerful turbocharged car, but very, very light, second fastest. Not too far adrift in terms of the lap time either. 81 going to a garage. Longin peers in to have a word with Peter Guelinckx to say, how is it? And the answer comes that he's not doing too badly. Peter Guelinckx, who has raced in the Preventic series and done the Dubai 24 hours, but now learning about rather more powerful cars and enjoying himself in GT2, and he's got good racecraft, as we saw at Misano. Right, Angerhofer is still pressing on, although slightly down in one of the sectors on this lap. Hans Stuck is picking up the pace of number 24 KTM that Chris Rosenberger was behind the wheel of earlier. 9:11 is on an out lap as well. Leonardo Gaurini has gone back out. So the car now up towards the chicane. As it does so, the car, the Porsche, tries to find some grip, turns right, then left, and up towards the timing line onto a proper flying lap. So now we'll see whether Leonardo Gaurini can go any faster. It's interesting to see how the times are changing largely for the better, even though it's not a qualifying session. But as drivers get more confident, as the cars get lighter with the fuel, then so another tenth or so is found. And one that is going quicker is Christoph Ulrich, who has now done a 2 minutes 49.438. So now up towards Gaulinckx goes Ulrich. There is number 7 KTM, which is 7/10 of a second back from this car in the class battle within the AMS. So Leonardo Gaurini making a pretty good debut in this championship. Good to have another Porsche on the grid as well. You can compare and contrast the relative pace and development as well. Also good that they're across 2 different teams, and Leonardo Gaurini adding more competition within the AMP class against the KTM battle pack now. Got the Lamborghini of Mauro Casadei in there, so we're having different drivers coming in fresh every round. So it's looking promising. A few more to be committing to a season would be good, but more and more exploring the championship, hopefully to commit to next year. You saw how the rain is still falling as well, with 15 minutes of the session still to go. And largely everybody on track apart from Peter Guelinckx at the moment. He is still in the pit lane. So there is Gaurini, still 4th quickest, and on this lap, sector 1 is a little bit down, so no improvement expected. Christoph Ulrich did go quicker last time through and did a 2:49.438, so that just narrows the margin by hundredths within the AM battle, but these not necessarily KTM conditions. One thing they're all coping with as well now is the drama inside in terms of visibility as well, because you've got the spray from the outside, you've got the condensation inside, which is worse in some cars, possibly worse in the KTM than others, but Christoph Ulrich certainly is coping with it very, very well. And Gaurini down towards the chicane as the clock ticks on down. Most people, as I say, on track, only Peter Guelinckx's car remaining in its garage for the moment, and certainly drivers taking full advantage of a wet Spa, getting the mileage in. They're going to need it for qualifying particularly. They might need it tomorrow come racing as well. Now this for Angerhofer is an improvement, or it should be. The lap times are coming down. Sectors are coming down, but I think Klaus Angerhofer he's just quite content to get the mileage in here and think about a time when we get to qualifying, because it's certainly not the most rapid of laps. And in fact, Bale done a bit, come in, hand the car over now to Hubert Trunkenpolz. That is the Christoph Ulrich KTM, which had been going quicker. That now pits. Laptop deployed to have a look at the data, see whether anything needs to be adjusted. You don't need a toolkit anymore, you need your laptop in modern day motor racing. There's more evidence of it. So Christoph Ulrich is in, and there, getting out of the car is Klaus Angerhofer. He now gives that to Hubert Trunkenpolz. It's the car, remember, with that engine change from earlier on. And now a driver change goes on, the very distinctive bodywork of the KTM, up, forward, and the wiper's still going, but it looked very quirky like that. But these exciting shapes that the KTMs are built around. Confirmation, as I think I mentioned earlier on, about the Teichmann Racing KTM, Rupert Atzberger's car. That's officially been withdrawn due to the damage sustained earlier on in the day. So it's one we've lost, but High Class Racing still forging on with the Audi to try and get that out for tomorrow. Jaromir Jeric has now been given a chance in the Target Racing Lamborghini. So it was Mauro Casadei and Cedric Lima last time out. Now it is Jaromir Jeric. And again, Mauro saying, I've got the perfect category for you. Come and race with me. Come and have a go at GT2, see what you think. And then hopefully another driver will commit for more races this year, or indeed perhaps for next season. But the championship getting stronger. And Stefan Ratel, a big believer of this. Of course, you could argue that coming out of a pandemic, not the ideal time to launch a brand new category, but there's certainly a lot of interest in it. It's just getting drivers to commit. One team that we did have at the start of the year we've lost, partly because of the vagaries each month of travel. So there's the pandemic, there's the travel, there's everything else to factor in, never mind usual motor racing dramas for a new series. So it's weathering the storms pretty effectively at the moment. So with the session now with just 11 more minutes to go, at the end of this, the circuit is given over to British GT cars, which also had a fairly bruising morning, but find some wood to touch. This session is relatively trouble-free. We haven't had a car that I can think of, other than Luca Piri running wide, doing anything strange. So, might have rather spoiled things by saying that, but the drivers being respectful of the circuit and the conditions seemingly here. So there, up to Blanchimont goes Jaromir Jeric. After a long layoff in GT terms, coming back down to the chicane now. Stefan Ratel, incidentally, who has taken over number 88, has just pitted. Over the timing line goes the Lamborghini. There is the Stefan Ratel, Luca Piri Audi. Stefan behind the wheel of it, and staying behind the wheel of it, seemingly. Probably because it's dry in there, but Luca Piri leans in, and that car will venture back out again with 9 more minutes on the clock. But Bert Longin's time from earlier on, when in most cases, you have the faster driver aboard, that stands for the moment. Hubert Trunkenpolz on an outlap, having taken over number 17 from Klaus Angerhofer, and he's being very cautious, isn't he? Hubert Trunkenpolz, another driver that's come from the KTM crossbow battle. So, nasty track conditions for everybody. Tiptoes round. You can understand why he's being cautious as well, not wanting to risk it when there's nothing really to achieve other than just some experience of the track conditions here, but you're not needing to press on at maximum to go for a time. People are improving though, Hans Stuck being one of them. There's a surprise in these conditions. Not. And also improving is Leonardo Gaurini. He's on a 2:47.627 now, Gaurini, to go fourth. In many ways, he's been the standout of the session because new into the car, new into the championship, and in these conditions, okay, he's 1.6 seconds back from the top three, but Leonardo Gaurini, I think he's doing a very, very good job, considering that he's not raced the car yet. There is Peter Guelinckx, who's back out on track, just working his way past Hubert Trunkenpolt, coming down towards the chicane. And what about other KTMs? Well, the Hans Stuck car is currently fifth fastest. This is one that rises and falls because you've got Hans Stuck in his 70s now, who is still incredibly quick, but not as quick a co-driver. So when Stucky's behind the wheel, of course it flies, and when you do the driver change, so it drops back. But the double Le Mans winner, Grand Prix racer, a huge enthusiast still for his motor racing. Honorary member is Hans Stuck of the British Racing Drivers Club, and comes then down now to the right-hander of Campus. Turns it in, looks for some grit, finds it, gets back on the power. And this lap is not looking good in sectors, but his last lap was an improvement. He did 2:48.133, so he went slightly faster last time. 24 goes through then. Hans Stuck out of Blanchimont. We've got 6.5 minutes of the session to go, and 10 of the 11 expected seen in this session then in the end. High Class Racing still working tirelessly to get that car back out, the Audi ready for the qualifying sessions, but I think it's more likely that it goes off the back of the grid for the races tomorrow. Into the pits comes Hans Stuck. So is that mission accomplished, or is he going to go back out again? We shall see in due course. Puts that car fifth fastest. There is Leonardo Gaurini, who comes down to the chicane and is going to pit, I think. Yes, he is. So is that because he's done, or is that for one last tweak and then go back out? But with only 5 minutes and change on the clock, more and more of them heading for the pit road, as you see. It's Christoph Ulrich's KTM that is heading the Gaurini Porsche to the garages, to the pit bunkers. And Leonardo Gaurini, as I say, one of the standouts in this session. He's the fastest of the AMs. Christoph Ulrich was the AM opposition, now it's Hans Stuck. And you think, how on earth can Stucky be an AM? Well, it's all to do with age, and therefore, of his years, he's graded as bronze, therefore he goes into the AMs. Out of the car gets Leonardo Gaurini, so seemingly that's done in the session. For either number 116 or 911, depending on which way up the board is held. But Leonardo Gaurini, good job done there, and the team very happy with that. I think he's enjoyed himself as well, despite the nasty conditions. So, yeah, all smiles, I think, in that crash helmet. So thank you to the team. The Porsche engineers observe as well. The Pirelli technicians are there for the wet weather tyres, which are still needed, because that is what the track condition is like at the moment. Still the rain falls, it's still pretty heavy, and over the last 20 minutes, I suspect, has got a bit worse, certainly on the pit straight. This is Aurelius Rustica, who is tiptoeing his way down through Bruxelles at the moment. Rustica, great Porsche fan, has done occasional long-distance races, but there's a limit to what you can race in Lithuania because of the finite numbers of circuits and championships. Businessman as well as racer, but like I say, great Porsche fan, and this series is absolutely ideal because he can race a Porsche. They are races where he has a co-driver and therefore can learn as well, and Michael Vergers is a very good driver to have on board as both a quick co-driver to help with the result and also to help with data. Michael was in spectacular form at Misano had a tyre drama in one race that forced him off the road, but other than that, they've gone really well together this year. So Aurelius Rustica down towards campus, had a third at Monza in both races, a third at Hockenheim. So they've been podium regulars across the 6 races, 3 events that we've had thus far this year. And they are going to get, Aurelius Rustica is going to get one more lap out of the session, but that probably is about it looking at the clock. At the moment, they're lapping in north of 2 minutes 50. So there's going to be less than a lap time left in the session when he comes towards the line. Up past the pits he comes. And Aurelius Rustica will get one more lap out of the session. That last lap was a 3 minutes, and the best the car did in slightly less wet conditions was a 2:45 earlier on. But I think now the driver's just trying to get through this session without dramas. Some have bailed, as you know, because they've done what they need to do. This is Stefan Ratel, who got into the Audi a bit later into the session after Luca Piri had done the lion's share of the work earlier, but he comes up towards the line now. So from 2:24s earlier on in the day, where it was Fjordback ahead of Longin, ahead of Stefan Rossina, it is 2 minutes 44s. Peter Guelinckx ahead of Michael Lickermohl and Aurelius Rustica now, but Bert Longin, Peter Cox and Michael Vergers doing the times earlier on. So there is Stefan Ratel, and the last lap that he did, understandably slow because track conditions are getting worse. It's interesting that some are staying out though, because there's little to be achieved in terms of the time. You're only putting yourself at risk, but yet they're not pitting. So it's almost as though, well, we've got the track time, we're going to make full advantage, which is entirely their choice, of course. But into the garage is pushed Peter Guelinckx's car. Bert Longin has done for the moment, as well as you saw after that great lap early on to be the quickest. And the flag is imminent. We're into the last minute now. So there, number 5, which is the Aurelius Rustica Porsche. And the flag will greet it this time around. So the flag is imminent, as I say, and I think the teams will be delighted to have got through this without dramas, because this is exactly the kind of weather that can entrap you, but they've all survived it. So the flag will be out, as I say, at the end of this lap for Aurelius Rustica. He makes the run now towards the timing line, and the flag will await. And Bert Longin and Peter Guelinckx, who, as I say, have already parked the car, pretty pleased with that session, putting them up at the top of the times. Rustica will carry on. He will get another lap out of this rather than heading straight for the pit road, but again, that's his choice. And over the timing line to take the flag he goes then. So although the team possibly saying last lap checkered flag, he does at least elect to take the flag on the circuit and then make the run round to the pit lane. Another one to come towards the timing line, Stefan Ratel, and this car again not improving in sectors late session as the amount of standing water on the road has got worse. Over the timing line goes Stefan, and that is enough to keep the car 8th fastest. So this is the soggy scene at Spa, really. The rain continues to fall. British GT teams now have to cope with the wet weather in their second free practice session, and here, coming over the timing line coming past the old pits, I should say, having taken the flag, is Stefan Ratel on his way back to the pit lane. But you can see how nasty the conditions are, understandably. People being careful this morning. So there is number 23. That's Michael Blinkemolen bringing it to the flag. A job well done for Peter Cox early on. That car will break the beam in a moment, but again, slower laps since the track conditions have deteriorated so markedly up towards the end of the session here. So, at the end of free practice 2 for the Fanatec GT2 European Series, it is Bert Longin the fastest, ahead of Peter Cox with Michael Vergers third. Leonardo Gaurini, the invitation AM, fourth, ahead of then Hans Stuck with Christoph Ulrich sixth. Stefan Rossiner in the end seventh, with Luca Piri eighth, doing the time. Mara Casadei ninth, and Klaus Angerhofer 10th quickest. Bert Longin's margin to Peter Cox, 0.669 of a second in the end, on a road that started wet, possibly became a little less wet at one point, but then got wetter completely by the very end, and people tiptoeing round to the end of that session, keeping out of trouble, keeping out of harm's way. But a good effort by Bert Longin, by Peter Cox, and it does tee us up nicely for the qualifying sessions, 20 minutes per driver. Later on, one driver, one session. If you're the soloist, of course, you do both, but they are independent grids. So you have the grid in Q1 for race 1 and the times in Q2 for the second race. Let's just have a look back at what happened in that second free practice session, with the teams having to cope with the conditions. Christoph Ulrich venturing out, so too Luca Piri and Sedi Sarmini, but the drivers having to adapt themselves to a wet, treacherous road that they didn't have to worry about in free practice 1. Sedi Sarmini was looking pretty good early on, so too when Stefan Rossiner was behind the wheel of the car was he, and a bit of a lock-up going down towards the La Source hairpin from number 911 of Leonardo Gaurini. He got away with that as Bert Longin put the Audi number 81 to the top of the times. It was quite a long time before Jaromir Jirik was given anything to do in number 32 Lamborghini, whereas Stefan Ratel took over from his next-door neighbour Luca Piri in the Audi. Peter Guelinckx had done some laps, the car taken to the garage, the road got wetter. It did go back out again to cope with the conditions, but ultimately nobody really improved their time. So, at the end of free practice 2, it's an Audi that tops the times, but it's a different one from FP1. It's the Bert Longin Peter Guelinckx Audi, and qualifying will come up this afternoon. Join us for that if you can, but for now, from David Addison, it's goodbye.